I think it's important to recognize that you can't have 100% security and also then have 100% privacy and zero inconvenience.
This is a dragnet, it's an overreach, and we've got to find out why this is justified simply because the NSA wants to do some data mining.
President Obama with a strong endorsement of sweeping surveillance programs his administration is conducting, but continued criticism from Congressman James Sensenbrenner, who just happens to be one of the authors of the Patriot Act. Time to bring in our panel. Tucker Carlson, host of Fox and Friends Weekend. Charles Lane of the Washington Post, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Well, as you heard, the president defended the surveillance programs today as, quote, modest encroachments on privacy. He said they help protect us. He said that they have strong, independent safeguards. Tucker, are you persuaded?
I disagree. I don't think he defended the program. I think he ignored the question. The question was really simple. It was, does the U.S. government, I'm quoting, maintain a massive secret database of personal online information and activity? The president didn't even address that question. He instead said three things. One, we're not listening to your phone calls, and there's no allegation that the U.S. government was. Second, people were being mean to me because I'm not a Republican. And third, it's the Congress's fault. He did not address the core question, who cares about phone calls? The key question is the U.S. government watching what you do online? Do they have copies of your emails and of your online activity? The answer is clearly yes. And for all the president's talk about how it's mature that we're having a conversation about this, he ignored it completely. He ought to be pressed to answer with some specificity whether the U.S. government is keeping that data in storage. And again, they clearly, and one last thing, the terrorists have known this for 12 years. There's example after example of Al-Qaeda operatives getting busted by email. They know this. This is not national security secret. We ought to have a right to know what the government's keeping.
Charles, I may have heard a different news conference, because I thought as he was describing the Internet program, the president said it only targets foreigners and only then on foreign soil.
Well, yes, and I think kind of in response to Tucker's point, this is a massive amount of what they call metadata that's being culled together, which basically is sort of like who's calling who, when, how many times, and so forth, not the actual content of the calls. The president's absolutely, or the administration is absolutely right in making that distinction. To go get the content of a call or an email or something, you've got to get an additional warrant and show much more specific cause you do to sweep up all this stuff. I would just say in response to the fear a lot of people seem to have about this, when you throw out a figure like the government gathers, and I think the number today was 3 billion phone calls a day. Well, think about that for a minute. No one can make any sense of 10 phone calls, let alone 3 billion a day. It's so much information. In a weird way, it's less scary to think, because what are they going to do with all that in any short period of time?
Charles, we have a Tweet the Panel question tonight, and I'm going to give it to you. Karen Gallivan sends this in. Obama says federal judges can be trusted to keep data mining PRISM programs honest. Why, when his administration got one, meaning a judge, to sign the Rosen warrant?
She's absolutely right, but it's mostly the fact that you can't trust the administration, that it went to a judge with information it now says was false, meaning that he was a criminal co-conspirator, Rosen was, when they say they had no intention of making a criminal case involving him. So they were the ones who gave the judge false information. The trust issue has to do with the executive and not the judiciary here. And there's also an issue of being straight with the American people. You showed the clip of the president saying you can't have 100% security and 100% privacy. Here's what he said in his first inaugural address. We reject as false the choice between our safety and our ideals. So here he is, the Olympian, the messianic redeemer, who's going to abolish all of the conundrums of our politics, which is the conflict between security and liberty. And now all of a sudden he discovers that there really is a conflict. In fact, look, every 9-year-old knows that our entire Constitution is a way to try to resolve the issue of the liberty and security after the failure of the Articles of Confederation. So that's the essence of our politics. Here's a guy who comes in office and denies it, and now he admits it. And he only admits it after you get a leak, after all this is open. Tucker is right. The real issue here is the secrecy. Here's a president who, a few weeks ago, gives a speech, and he essentially says the tide of war is receding and the war on terror is done. He wants to abolish the authorization for the use of force. So on the one hand, he says the war is over. On the other hand, he's conducting an extraordinary, massive anti-terror program, which he is expanding. And how does he justify that? If the war on terror is over, why are you running a dragnet? And that he never discusses, and he thought he wouldn't have to discuss because he kept it all secret.
Chuck, let me pick up with you on this. Some Republicans, I mean, it was very interesting to watch because you've got people on opposite sides of the aisle opposing what the president's doing, people on opposing sides supporting what the president's doing. Former Bush spokesman Ari Fleischer today called it George W. Bush's fourth term. The president seems to be going to great lengths to say this is not George W. Bush.
Well, it's interesting. One of the ways it's not George W. Bush is, even though the activities of the NSA are about the same, there is congressional authorization for this, with maybe insufficient, but some judicial supervision.
Actually, that started under Bush.
Yeah, that's
the Bush administration.
That's true. But they did it without authorization first. Then it got
Well, 9/11
authorized.
happened, and they had to do something.
Yeah, okay. But Obama has never done it without congressional authorization. That is a difference.
Well, he came in 8 years later.
Rand Paul and Al Gore both are denouncing this in extreme terms, which, I mean, to my mind, is actually something that recommends it. It does strike me that there is a trade-off here. You're right, he denied it in the past, but they are making it. It remains to me to be shown that this is an unworkable or unfair or bogus trade-off.
I was here for the whole Bush administration. I missed the part where we learned that the U.S. government kept a record of every Google search and email. I missed that. Have we had a national debate on that? Where was I? Barbados? I mean, we haven't actually had a national debate on this. Most people are not aware of that. That does have implications. And is the presumption that we don't think they're... Because unlike telephone calls, you can search email instantly, as you know. So this does have implications for the privacy of every person, all 309 million Americans.
All right. I'm glad we cleared that up.